And I have talked to people who are actively working with organizations, helping people in violent and abusive situations get help they need. And they are still they don't realize it. They're currently in an abusive situation. And then there'll be something that will be an aha moment for them. And it might be because they're dealing with a parallel situation in somebody else's, they're supporting someone else. And then they go, wait a minute, that's me.
I get it with friends of mine. I get it with my family is, why don't they just leave? It's so easy. I don't understand.
For many people, they have trouble understanding just how low someone's sense of self-worth is.
But I don't think a lot of people understand the depth of grief that comes with divorce or any life changes, right? Like your health.
I will publish anonymous stories of people's experiences as victors over violence.
Welcome to the Just Separated podcast. Hi, I'm Karen Omand, a thanatologist, grief counselor, divorce strategist, and co-author of the Just Separated workbook. I draw on years of personal and professional experience to guide you through the challenges of your divorce. Together, with our expert guests, we'll equip you with the clarity, resilience, and tools to take charge and move forward with confidence. Follow Just Separated and join us as we explore the many different facets of divorce. Hi, welcome to the Just Separate podcast. I'm your host, Karen Omand, co-founder of the Divorce Workshop. Today, we're going to talk about life changes, real talk for life's hardest turns. And our expert guest is Deena Kordt. Deena is a podcaster, published author, and an advocate that draws from her personal journey to passionately empower others. Through her compelling content and engaging presentations, Deena communicates a deep sense of caring with a heart-centered purpose to install hope and create connections so people never feel alone in their life struggles. As owner and publisher of Life Changes and Divorce magazine and host of the Life Changes channel podcast, her mission is to inspire and connect caring humans to see and value each other with curiosity and compassion. Welcome, Deena, to the Just Separated podcast.
Thank you, Karen. I really appreciate the invitation. It's been a really fun connection and collaboration that we've had, and I really admire what you and Kirk are doing to make a difference in the world of divorce. So I love that I have this opportunity to talk to your audience.
Well, thanks for coming on. We know all the good work you do, and we're going to talk about that today. My first question is, your brand is all about navigating the big life changes with compassion and connection. So do you have one or two life changes that you have gone through that has you seen as a gift? Because it's just a different type of question, right? Because so life changes are so hard, right? Yeah. But sometimes when you reflect back after you go through them, we can actually see them that they may have been a gift. And I want to ask you if you've had any of those.
Great question. And I think to jump right in and show our human side and how that has been an inspiration for the work we do now is like, what a great way to allow people to know like why I care so much about the work that I'm doing. So yes, many life changes. I love to say as well, when we talk about life changes, that some are expected, some are unexpected, some are positive, some are more of a challenge. And I've had all of those, obviously. And I also want to focus on, when we talk about what changes do we still want to create in our life. So that's all some of the work. Now, the ones I've experienced have been all over the place. The most significant that relate to the work I'm doing now are loss and divorce and abuse. So those are the three really big ones. With loss, I have lost two brothers as they were young adults. One was 26, one was 34, and it was 9 years apart. It was really, really difficult to see that through my parents' experience and losing two of their four children. And then I was in an abusive situation at that time for both of those losses. Didn't process that grief and that loss because I was in a survival mode. And once I realized what I was living in, over 30 years of abuse, and just to understand how that impacted me and how it impacted everything that was happening in my life, being in that type of headspace where you are um, really hyper vigilant. You're watching for anything that might trigger that abuse. You're very hypersensitive to also protect your children as well as your own safety. And to understand that this actually isn't healthy. This isn't the norm. We do realize now, with the work I'm doing, this is an epidemic. Sadly, it has escalated and is not always understood. If it isn't physical, then people don't even understand and realize that it's destructive and that they're in that. So the loss part, I've lost my mom very suddenly too during COVID to cancer. Uh, there's been loss in my health in some impacts, significant motorcycle accident 7 years ago that has, that was a healing process as well. I'm fine now, but there's leftover trauma that a person is dealing with. So there's different types of loss, losing friendships, losing relationships, that can happen as well during a divorce or separation, which is something that you see quite often in the work that you're doing. And then around the abuse, which I've already talked to as well. So the divorce, I felt I'm done. It's gone. It's behind me. Same with the abuse, and realizing more and more how much that did affect me and continues to affect me. And I thought, walk away from all that. These are things I've lived with. These are things I've experienced. I'm an eternal optimist. Anybody who knows me, I'm always looking for the silver lining, and not in a toxic way, in a realistic way. But I started to realize that this could be a gift that I can use now to help and support others. Like, I can use this to speak up and be a voice and be an advocate for those who aren't safe to do so yet. And I now, one of my keynote addresses is I am a recovering invisible woman, and how invisibility through all of that was a superpower at that time. It helped protect me, but I'm recovering from that. And part of that is this speaking up and this advocating and the work that I'm doing. So that's my why.
Yeah, I love that. When you were talking, the whole thing is, everyone knows I'm a thanatologist, and I'm
Yeah.
sitting here and I'm thinking how much grief there is in that story, and how much is not even acknowledged by society, which is probably one of the reasons why I started Divorce Workshop 4 years ago. Is I know there's death loss. I studied it. I've counseled a lot of people with it, but I don't think a lot of people understand the depth of grief that comes with divorce or any life changes, right? Like your health. I've talked to a lot of divorced people that have gone through a divorce and their health is affected. So that's
Mm-hmm.
another loss, right? So there's all these layers of loss that I'm hearing you say. And the key thing is I don't think as what you're so strong about doing is advocating to make more awareness about it. So I'm not sure that what your thoughts on about that is. Like, there's still a huge disenfranchised grief that goes around with these big life changes. Even if you were wanting the divorce or needed the divorce, there's still stigma. There's still not enough support out there. I'm not sure if that's what you've been seeing as well.
I have. And there's so much peripheral grief, like you're talking about. There's so much more that we don't realize. So after my bike accident, my job, I was informed just 2 days after getting out of the hospital, 2 surgeries, 2 weeks of recovery in hospital. Oh, we've dissolved your position as well as that whole department. And I'm suddenly unemployed. I'm in two hand splints, an air boot. My face has got some abrasions. I've had a concussion. I'm not employable at that point, right? So now there's also that type of a loss. So people see career change. And even if it's a choice, like I talked earlier about, even if it's an expected life change, you don't always expect that peripheral grief, that loss, those adjustments that can come with that. So there's a change maybe in identity. There's a change in, you may have to be moving, looking at a change of lifestyle, a change in your income, a change in the colleagues that you will be working with, the collaborations that are going on. That's all things, financially, real estate, your career, your identity, that all carries something that you do need to think about. You may not have considered it would be part of it, but don't just ignore it. And I've always had this, okay, next, like just moving on. But whoa, sometimes that awareness has to be brought to your attention that, have you considered this, or how are you feeling about that? How is this going? Was there anything unexpected that came up that maybe you need some support with? And, I really feel like there's more to our loss, like say around divorce and separation. Yes, there's relationships, friendships, your former in-laws. There's different things that can be really tricky. Maybe you were really close to one of your nieces and nephews, and now that's how are you going to navigate that? And who can you talk to help with some of that? If you're co-parenting, very challenging. How can you set that up for a good outcome? Who can you be now that you can look back on and say, hey, I admire how I went through that. I admire how I showed up, the human I was, because now it set us up for many years of a relationship that's going to be conducive to good parenting. And there's so much that we don't, this is just, it's huge what you've mentioned, Karen. And I think it's important for people to just take a pause, take a breath, and maybe even sit down and journal that out, or have some thoughts, or find somebody in these professions that you can talk to and say, what should I be considering if I'm trying to make a decision and I want to be informed, or I'm kind of in the middle of it, and what are some things I do need to consider that will help me through this? And also maybe often there's children involved. How can I support my children as well through this?
Do you find that, I was thinking too, is that when you go through these life changes, divorce or big changes, there's a lot of loneliness that comes with that. So I'm a really big key component of support systems. Different types, like I call them the four pillars of support. It's a thantology, and it's make sure you have the right professionals, as you said. There's good coaching out there. There's good therapists. There's the lawyers you need if you're divorcing, or mediators, financial advisors. But there's also the friends and family. So you have to make sure that you have the right friends and family, right, that support you. Because you can tell me what your experience was, but my experience was my family didn't really know how to support me well through my high conflict divorce. They weren't equipped. Not that they were bad, they just didn't know what to say, right? And then you had some friends that were maybe too aggressive and not empowering, right? So we want to make sure your friends and family are doing good by you, the right support systems. And then another one I use is peer support, right? There's great peer support where, in any type of situation, whether it's going to a divorce support group or even a cancer support group, right? As long as they're good, solid peer supports. And then yourself, right? Because we know recovery through anything is a skill and you have to do it yourself. But I don't know what your thoughts about that, because you talked about how we shift friends, shift family, and that all happens. But the more support we have in these life changes can be really beneficial.
Absolutely. It's tricky. There's so much negative stigma still definitely around abuse, but around divorce as well, even if there isn't abuse involved. And it's fascinating to me in a way, because 50% of marriages, roughly, first marriages, and even higher for second, are ending in divorce. And yet we feel alone. We feel ashamed and failure, and we're embarrassed about a situation that is so common. And it's unfortunate because that restricts us often from reaching out for that support or accepting that support, because we feel like it's my fault. I have to figure this out for myself. This isn't anybody else's mess to clean up. And, or because it's so common, that how many other people in a potential support system are going through it as well. And you don't want to burden them with your own, whether that's a loss or a divorce or, a choice that you've made. It might even be around career, and you think, oh, my problem isn't that big, but it does affect you. So those support systems are very important, and they are difficult to know who you can trust or who is going to have your back, because it isn't always the best idea, like you say, whether they're being really aggressive and they're just going to go help you fight your battle. Sometimes that can do more damage than good, or it sends you down a path on a mindset that isn't going to be healthy for you or your family or the outcome. So asking and knowing that it's okay to be human, that is very important, to allow yourself to ask. And so it starts in your own head. This is one of the biggest lessons that I try and help people understand is, and it's hard. I still struggle with this, but it's okay to ask for help. So that's a switch that you have to change in your own thinking, is to look in the mirror and say, you know what? You're doing the best you can. You are amazing. You're stronger than you know, but you don't have to do it alone. Who are we going to ask? Who can we talk to? Who can we share this with? And around abuse, one of the top 3 things I tell people is to tell somebody. So once you share and tell somebody, you now have opened an invitation for them to support you. If they don't know how to respond, which is typical, especially in those situations, then ask them to help you find help. Because a lot of times people hesitate to be involved because they're afraid they won't know how to help. And so if you could ask in such a way where you aren't saying, I need you to solve this, but can you please help me find the answers? Can you help me find somebody or a resource, an organization? Can you help me find some answers? That then makes it easier. It takes the pressure off somewhat of that support system.
That's a good tip, actually, right? Another thing I was thinking too is what's come up with myself, but with some clients too, Deena, is that they're not really even aware that they're in an abusive relationship, and then they get out, or they're trying to get out, and then they say to me, oh, my marriage was okay. It wasn't so bad, until we dig deeper. And then they go, oh my goodness. And this was me as well, right? It wasn't until I got out like a year after and I went, aha, I had an aha moment where I said, I think I was married to a high conflict personality. That's that trauma bonding. That's that intermittent reinforcement they were doing, right? It was a good system they have, right? So I didn't even know how to put it into words, right? So I guess that's a hard part for people that are coming out of abuse is to actually be able to say, I'm in an abusive relationship. I don't know where to get the help, but can you help me figure it out? Would that be something would be beneficial, you
It
think?
would be. Sadly, many people aren't believed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a support person and you want to be helping someone, or you're concerned about somebody, saying, I believe you, no judgment here. I, I, maybe I haven't seen it, or I've missed it, or I don't understand what you're living, but I believe you. And we are going to try and help, get you the resources that you need. But many people don't even realize it themselves that they're in it. And I have talked to people who are actively working with organizations, helping people in violent and abusive situations get help they need. And they are still currently They don't realize it. They're currently in an abusive situation. And then there'll be something that will be an aha moment for them. And it might be because they're dealing with a parallel situation in somebody else's, they're supporting someone else. And then they go, wait a minute, that's me right now. And they are helping to support people. They're aware of the red flags and the signs, and yet they're living it and have missed those signs in their own personal life. So again, we feel, we might mention bravely, this is something that I'm experiencing. Do you like, I don't know. I think this is abuse. And then people go, but are you sure? Could it really be? Why don't you just leave? Why have you stayed so long? And they get hit with those questions that they've been asking themselves. They've been struggling with those questions. And then it sheds doubt again. And what happens is, sadly, how a support person responds sets up how they may reach out again in the future. And so because they had that type of reaction from somebody that they bravely reached out to and it shed out, then they may be a very long time, if ever, that they reach out again, because they don't want to have somebody keep telling them, well, yeah, is it really abuse? Or, how bad could it be if you've stayed this long? Things like that. And it's really sad that it does keep pushing people back into those situations.
Well, remember, in these life changes, such as divorce, when someone dies that you love, and generally, we don't do grief well in North America anyways, but generally you do get some support, right? They acknowledge it. The thing that's frustrating about this disenfranchised grief, that these life changes that happen, is it's subjective in nature. So as you were saying, you could go to your family reunion and they'd be like, well, your ex provided you a beautiful house. Why would you have ever left? And then you could walk down the hallway and your cousin's there and they said, well, why'd you stay so long? He was an asshole. Oops.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're never getting, you're in this situation where you don't, like, the older family may say, you should have stayed. That's a vow you made forever. And then you're telling, the other ones are saying, no. So you're kind of, can be, the support systems can be all over the place and also very subjective. And that's something I wanted to bring up, that it's very difficult, because when you're going through that really hard, high conflict type of divorce, you need all the support you can get. And as you said, very, very clear, you need to be believed, right? It's really important.
It's challenging because much abuse that is not physical is the hardest to nail down. And it's not incidental, it's a pattern of incidents. So one of the keynotes I've done, I actually share, and I introduce this as, I'm not going to offer a trigger warning because there's no trigger warnings in real life. These are things you're going to potentially see. And so I tell a variety of scenarios. And sometimes the woman is the we'll say perpetrator, and sometimes it's the man, because 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men has been affected by domestic violence, domestic abuse. And in these scenarios, it's hard to kind of nail, something isn't right, and it's hard to nail it down. But if you just saw one incident, or maybe 2 or 3, you're as a witness, you wouldn't necessarily call that abuse, but it is. And you keep seeing this pattern of these incidents over and over. It's demoralizing, demeaning, it's devaluing, it's corrosive, it's damaging. And I had one event organizer say at the end of one of my keynotes, and she said she had a guest turn to her and say, oh my God, that's my brother. And hopefully the next time they are at a family gathering and they see something like that, they will say to the wife, hey, like, that was a mean joke, or that felt like unnecessary criticism, or how did that make you feel? Are you okay? And like, open up a conversation and say what you've observed. and say, does this go on a lot? Or, do you need some help? Or, how open those conversations. Many people, and I'll reinforce this, they struggle to address it and to talk to someone because, like you mentioned, that older generation, or even in general, we assume, hey, it's not our place. What happens between those in the marriage, it belongs in the marriage. It's not anybody else's space to be in. But also we avoid those conversations because we are afraid of the answer and that we won't have help. And we don't want to know. So before you open that conversation, it's very easy to be informed. What organizations are available for this, if there is abuse or even suspected. And if it's where there's smoke, there's usually fire. So if your instincts are saying there might be, there probably is. There's a reason, or they need somebody to talk to and say, hey, I believe you, no judgment, like what's happening. And be curious because things are not always as they appear. Don't make assumptions and also don't make judgments. So know what resources are there. And I encourage people, you might be concerned about jeopardizing somebody's safety further by handing them a brochure from an organization that helps people get away from abuse. So is there no more creative way that is potentially safer? I have pens, I have post-it notes, things like that, where you can just say, oh, hey, here's a recipe for brownies, or I don't know, something like that. Or you hand them a pen, something that isn't as likely to jeopardize their safety, but they have that contact. The other very important thing, if you are a support person, is not to judge them if they don't take action and leave right away, or if they leave and go back. Keep supporting them, keep helping them. It's so, so difficult to leave and stay away. The abuse escalates usually as well after there's been an attempt to leave. Be patient and don't be judgmental or discouraged. When they're ready, you can't force them. When they're ready, they're going to try and make a break for it. It is coming from a place of they've been so beaten down, like emotionally too, to feel like they are strong enough to leave. And I want to make a plug at some point here as well of an organization that can also help, I believe, to help women leave and stay away. And so Shelter Movers is somebody that I've heard of. They are now across much of Canada. They've been in business for, I don't know, 10 or so years. Incredible organization that help coordinate leaving, moving belongings, and storing them for no cost. They will also coordinate if police enforcement, police services need to be involved. That is all part of that. And the big advantage to that, I feel, is when women can leave and take their belongings with them, they're less likely to return, and they have dignity in having their possessions with them. Then those can also be stored indefinitely, multiple moves at no cost to them. Because if they have to go into a shelter, okay, but now where are my belongings going? So those are stored indefinitely. So I encourage people to look into that organization as well as their partners, because say, for instance, you're looking for a storage unit, why not support a company that's supporting families in this way? So just wanting to put that plug in there. That's another resource to be aware of.
Yeah, it's an exceptional resource, right? Another tool that they can have and arrange to do that. I want to ask, why do you think, I mean, this is a big question, that I still get it today. I get it with friends of mine. I get it with my family, is why don't they just leave? It's so easy. I don't understand. And it comes up in 2025 all the time. And so I know I've been there. It's not so easy, right? So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I'd love to, Karen. And I don't think it's a simple answer. And it is unfortunate that this is still coming up and that the awareness work that you and I are doing is so important for this. For many people, they have trouble understanding just how low someone's sense of self-worth is, how even though it may not be physical, which is always where people think, well, if it isn't physical, it's not that bad. But if you say it's that bad, why aren't you just leaving? There's so many nuances to this. There's even pets that are used to manipulate. So, oh, I'll harm your pet, or you'll never get your pet back again, or they'll stay for that. Obviously, children are used as a manipulative tool to even in the abuse. So I've witnessed children, not in my own family, but friends of mine, and sadly this particular friend took her life eventually. And her, I think, 7-year-old daughter at the time, I was starting to see her speaking to her mom the way her dad was. So you see your children being used in the abuse as well. And you see that they care for that other parent, and you feel like you would be ripping that family apart, like you're the bad guy. You're already made out often to be criticized and put down, and it's terrifying to break that family apart. The other thing that will keep people is they're pretty familiar with the abuse they're in. So it's kind of picking the devil over what could happen after. And it's important to know, and I don't want this to discourage people from leaving, but post-separation violence is far more prevalent and dangerous than the abuse that they potentially are in. Now, I'm just generalizing, but there is, and I think innately we know that if we were to attempt to leave, or we do leave, that we're endangering ourselves even more and our families. And so there's going to be a period of time that transition is happening. You need support through that. You need organizations who understand what needs to be in place to help you get out and stay out. So that decision is massive. I would encourage people. So I already mentioned there's 3 things I really do encourage people who think they may be in abuse, and aren't even sure, or they know and they don't know what to do. So one of them was to tell someone. And if the first person doesn't believe you, tell somebody else. You be brave, keep telling people until you find someone who does believe you and isn't judging and is going to support you. The second thing is, I often, not that they're in any order of priority, but another thing is document. It's so easy to say, oh, but I made him mad, and so that's why that happened, or downplay it, or say, well, it wasn't that bad. Or we'll tend to want to downplay because we want to believe that we can trust the choice we made to be there. We want to believe that we made a good choice in being with this partner. We want to always see the best. And you mentioned the intermittent, the highs and lows, like they have this system of showing you the good times and then knocking you down again. And so we keep hopeful. And so we keep seeing that silver lining, and we downplay. But if you start documenting it, doing a note on your phone, wherever you want to do that you feel safe to document. It is important to document. Don't think, oh, I'll remember. Document. Put the day, put the incident. If you also want to say how that made you feel, great. But when you look back and start seeing the frequency and the how hard that was, the intensity of it, you're going to go, oh, I had not realized how often this was happening, how it made me feel. And it reminds you of some of those. And you're like, damn, that was really bad. That I didn't deserve that. And so document, tell someone. And the third thing is prepare, be prepared. So in the times where it's not as imminent or dangerous, like when you have a calmer safe time to do so. Gather, and I have a checklist on my website as well. You can find them in various places, but gather medicines, prescriptions, important paperwork, documents, financial records, medical, like whatever you need for yourself and your kids, and your pet as well, potentially. An extra set of keys, change of clothes. There's a checklist. Have that prepared ahead of time, and have that either in a vehicle if you feel that you're safe to do it there, or have it at a safe at a friend's home, or some family where you feel that you can safely store this. Because in that moment, when you realize, I need to get out, I need to remove myself and my children, I need to get out now because it's imminent, you do not have the headspace or the time to now be gathering these things that are very important. That can also help you to leave when you know you need to, because you realize, okay, I'm prepared. I have this. I have the important things I need. But it also is going to mean that you are admitting to yourself the need for this, that I am not always safe. So I do need to prepare to get out. And it's more likely you will stay out too.
Yeah, I was thinking when I was planning to leave, I called my sister and said, "Are you going to be embarrassed that I'm planning to leave?" So I had felt so much stigma and so much shame that I had to call my older sister and say, "Are you going to be embarrassed that I'm leaving this? I'm finally opening and waking up to what I'm really in, and I'm planning behind the scenes to leave." And she said the right thing, and no, of course not, right? But that still is a heavy burden that I carried, and I'm sure a lot of people still carry. And another point I want to make was, it was really sad that we're in that situation now where we have, you know what I mean, that domestic violence or abuse is still so prevalent. And there's also, as much as we advocate for them to get out, and it makes me sad that we're still getting in them, right? We're still that cycle of the abusers, that, you know what I mean? I think it's, is it Lundy? Do you know Lundy Brunt? I think his name is, and he's a well, I think that's his name. Sorry if it's not right, but he studies the abuser, and it's like a pattern they learn when they're young,
Yeah.
right? And they devalue women and men too, depending. And so, how the advocacy work also has to be, how can we stop that? Like,
Yes.
like I just sit there, I'm going, this makes me, I'm just sad. And then another thing is like, for people that I want to also mention, if you date again after you've been through an abusive relationship, right? Be very, very mindful that you don't attract the same type. And because I was worried about that, when I started dating again, I was really worried about that. And I know this is not where we're going, but I just want to make sure people understand there are red, yellow, and green flags, and we know the red ones. Like as you said, like the physically stalking, maybe, but there are yellow flags that a lot of us ignore, and we may have ignored them. I know I did ignore them before I got married to this person. So that's a preventative thing too, that we can also people look into. Actually, Reverend Janice, if you look her up, she has a book, and it's like the yellow, red, and green flags of post divorce, as well as for young people too, so we can try to prevent more of these relationships, if that makes sense to you.
Oh, I'm happy you brought that up, Karen, because it's very important. We struggle, and I mentioned briefly about the trust part, like to trust ourselves again. And how can I trust myself to make a decision when I really messed it up the first time, and chose that type of person and overlooked those red flags? And I think that's powerful advice, because this research does show that uh, to continue to just pull people out of the river and not go upstream, the kids witness this, they grow up in that environment, that's a norm, and we set them up for the next generation of abusers and victims. So it's very important that we keep talking about this, keep talking about what the incidence is, and that it literally has been declared an epidemic in communities and counties and provinces. And where I'm located in Red Deer, we happen to have the highest per capita rate of abuse in the nation, in Canada. And that's just the cases that we're aware of. And when I share that locally with, other people in my area, they're shocked. And what I appreciate about that shock factor is they are now going to be more open to listening to their instincts, in either for themselves in their own relationships, or when they witness something that they now may attribute to, I wonder if that person needs support. I'm going to find an opportunity to open that conversation and talk to others. But yeah, getting back into what can we do to go upstream? I think also one of the big things is celebrating the healthy relationships, celebrating the people who are making a difference. There's many men that are speaking up and trying to make a difference. Let's celebrate them. And with the work I'm doing, the majority of my audience is females, 65 to 70%, depending which stat I look at. And so I've had business mentors strongly encourage me to niche out the men and really focus on the women. And I flat out refuse. There are less supports out there for men. There's less communities for them where they can feel safe to talk about the frustrations of either their marriage or their divorce or post-divorce. And there's a reason there's a high rate of suicide and depression and mental illness in the men in our world. So I think by offering them support, encouragement, understanding, I believe you, like where can I support you? Would this, and offer supports and say, would you find this helpful? Because many times they're like, I'm good. It's all good. I got this. They resort to violence and out of frustration. And by violence, I mean the non-physical as well. And they're going to tear down and be nasty and horrible to the mother of their children or their ex-wife or their co-parent or even in the marriage. So can we please look for ways to open those conversations with the men in the world who are usually, not always, they aren't always the perpetrator, so the men and the women, but I feel like men don't get the support that they need as much for dealing with those very difficult emotions. And something that is interesting, dirty little secret is a phrase that came up in my work from two different people. And it's like from two different sides of this. So one was a lady who was living with abuse. She called that a dirty little secret. We're living, again, this recovering invisible woman. We're hiding it from the outside world. We're ashamed. We're embarrassed. We don't want people to know that we're still in a situation that's so nasty and destructive. And so we put on this front. So it's a dirty little secret. The other person that mentioned it was a man who had worked in the oil and gas industry, or there could be any type of industries, but that's one where many times men are away from home, or they're in camp, or they're spending downtime with the guys over lunch or whatever it might be. And there's this dirty little secret that abuse is going on, and men will kind of joke about it, or they talk about it, or the guys who don't condone it don't know how to challenge that. How it's a dirty little secret. This is happening between him and his wife. I can't speak up. Like, what if I say something? Then they're going to turn that on me, and I'm going to be ridiculed and called a pussy or whatever it might be, and they're going to be putting a target on their own back by trying to speak up. So this is a dirty little secret on that side as well. So this is what we are pushing against. And it's not going to be eradicated in our lifetime, but we can definitely create some culture change and keep speaking up. Yes, it becomes, you feel hopeless sometimes in, am I going to make a difference? It can be heavy work. It can be it's heavy. It's heavy, but it needs to happen.
Just a quick thing there. I just want to validate what you're saying, is because I find the divorce world it's men or women, and it can never just be, you're either supporting women or supporting just men, and men don't have them, as you said, near as much support systems as women are. Definitely, we are better at getting the support systems, of talking about it. But there is this this, as you said with men, right? Like, as Kirk would say, oh, I'm not going to go to the bar and say, oh, my wife is abusing me. Like, that's just not the culture that men live in. Is that one of the reasons why they tuck it under the rug more when they're being abused? Is it why women are more vocal in the world, on social media or whatever, that, it is horrific what's happening to women. So I'm not saying that, but as you said, there are men that are being abused as well. And I've seen stories, you've seen stories. I had one person that said, well, women never abuse men. And I was like, well, I can tell you a few myself in my own family. It was my stepmother, my ex-mother-in-law, and Kirk's partner, his wife, right? Like, they were abusers. So that's not accurate, but there seems to be a real divisiveness in the divorce world anyways, about and I think I'm glad you're doing it, and we are doing it too. And I've met some other people like, no, it's everybody, right? Like, you don't have to pick a side, because people are hurting.
Yeah, that's
So,
very true.
yeah. So, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
I always want to encourage people to stay curious with compassion and not judgment. Just stay curious. Um,
Mm.
that's what's going to build these compassionate communities of support and heart-centered humans. Is, don't assume what you see is the truth. Everybody has a story, and when you are curious, you're going to ask, and you're going to say, "Hey, are you okay?" And if they say, "Yeah," you say, "No, really, are you okay?" Because you know I just feel like you've been more sad, or I saw or heard this happen to you, and I want to make sure you're okay. And just know that you can always come to me. And, well, maybe there's I can help you find some answers, or, something like that, an answer. One little thing I want to mention is talking about hangovers, vulnerability hangovers. So when you have those conversations with somebody, whether it's around grief, loss, divorce, abuse, whatever that might be, just know that they may pull back after, or you might feel yourself, if you've shared, you feel vulnerable. It's like a vulnerability hangover. It's like, oh no, what did I just tell them? What do they think of me? And they will maybe withdraw and pull back a bit. The way to deal with that is just head on. Say, hey, I appreciate you sharing. Just want to let you know I am here for you, and I appreciate that you trusted me with that. But no judgment. If you ever want to talk about it again, great. And in the meantime, hey, you want to go hike this trail, or change it up. Confront it though, acknowledge it, and then let them know. But things are, I don't judge you for this. Things are still the same. It's safe with me. I'm not going to tell other people, that kind of thing, if you ever need help. So I do encourage people to recognize that that could happen when you have those conversations, but stay curious.
I love that. So I ask everybody at the end of the podcast this question. So for someone who's just separated, whether they left or were left, what advice would you give them to help them navigate those overwhelming early days?
Take good care of yourself. Recognize that this could be so exhausting, and you're going to spend a lot of time questioning, your choice or questioning why somebody left you. And you're going to need rest. Take the time you need, ask for the help you need, and don't feel embarrassed or ashamed about it. Don't feel alone. There are so many people who care and would and want to help. Let them.
Great advice. So, Deena, I know you have your podcasts and you're a big speaker, presenter, and you have books. So, do you want to tell everyone about everything you do?
Oh my goodness, thank you. I yes, I have written some books that can help people around that next chapter, figuring out what it is you want to do with your life and how to make that happen. So it might even be something that will help you recognize some of those red flags as well, and how to take care of yourself. I'm also collecting stories for a compilation, an anthology called Hope in Hell. And with that book, I will publish anonymous stories of people's experiences as victors over violence. And in the meantime, while I gather those stories, we are publishing some of them in the magazine. So many of the people are like, hey, I'm okay with my name being shared. When we do it as a book, regardless of that, it will all be anonymous, just so the flow is all the same. It's all anonymous. And we want to keep it hopeful for people. So hope in hell. So if they've been through abuse, they can read stories. My story is one story, there's other stories. So finding hope in where they're at. So if anybody's interested in sharing their story, please contact me and let me know. And in the meantime, we can, while we gather enough, we can publish it in the magazine anonymously or not, so that people have some resource of hope. That's the book. My speaking has a lot to do with that as well. I talk about abuse, awareness, recovering, the recovering invisible woman that I spoke of earlier, what that looks like, how that has been, and building more awareness. People don't realize the high incidence of abuse there is and what it can look like. So that's some of the work I'm doing with that. I have a series on the podcast, Hope in Hell. I have a Divorce Diaries series where we talk about people's personal experiences that can also help people feel less alone in theirs. And there's the magazine that goes out quarterly. Everything's digital, so the platforms are really easy to find and they're easy to share. If people are looking to support someone, they can say, hey, I heard this podcast, I saw this article in the magazine. So quarterly magazine called Life Changes and Divorce Magazine Canada. So Life Changes and Divorce. We talk about many of the things we talked about today, Karen. And there's also a newsletter in the other 8 months. So every month there's some encouragement and some resources to help inform and empower people through these decisions. YouTube channel as well, social media. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can meet these experts and these professionals as well as others who've been through it. So a whole variety of platforms and ways to either find the support you need or help encourage and support someone else. I also have a Shift Happens show that I co-host with a friend of mine. So it's a live talk show. We have an episode every couple weeks, and we get on and talk about different shifts that happen in our lives or ones that we want to create in the world. So I encourage people to just check some of this out. I have two websites. I have the lifechangesmag.com, Life Changes Mag, and then deenakordt.com, where I have some other resources. And I dabble in a bunch of different things. I'm interested in helping people who would like to have their own podcast, their own magazine, their own book, their own blog, their own website, help them set that up as well. So many different ways that we can serve and help get the voices out there that need to be heard.
Yeah, I think you're a true inspiration, and
all
the work that you've done. You inspired even us for like 3 years ago, and we want to thank you. And without awareness, we don't have anything. It's one of the first steps with anything. And so divorce is just one of the big life changes. There's many, many that you talk about that I think is really important that people take notice, because this is life. Life is full of lots of changes, and they're big ones, and we need as much support as possible. So I really appreciate you coming on, and keep up the work, Deena.
Thank you. Same to you, Karen. I love what you and Kirk are doing because, again, like we've said, we need more of this awareness and support for people to know that, they have the power to make those decisions, and there is the support available.
There is. All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining today's discussion with our divorce expert. Check out the show notes for more about our guest. If you're finding value in our podcast, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our YouTube channel at Divorce Workshop. Share your questions, comments, or guest suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. For a comprehensive divorce guide, check out our Just Separated workbook on Amazon worldwide. This workbook covers everything from emotions and co-parenting to finances, legal insights, and recovery, a must-have for anyone navigating separation or divorce.